Dear blockchain citizens, welcome once again to the beautiful country of Switzerland, Crypto Nation. I'm here today at the Zurich University, sitting with Claudio Tessone. So, who are you, Claudio?
Thank you, Fred. My name is Claudio Tessone. I am Professor of Blockchain and Distributed Ledger Technologies at the University of Zurich, and I am also the Chairman of the Blockchain Center of this university.
That's amazing, and thank you for inviting to the university. So as many of you would know, we've done a strategic cooperation with the University of Zurich, with the Blockchain Observatory. And it would be really great to kind of understand what is the Blockchain Observatory and what are you going to do?
Yes, thank you. The Blockchain Center is the largest academic initiative in the area of blockchain in Switzerland. And there is something that makes us very proud, which is very and truly interdisciplinary. The University of Zurich is the largest in number of students inside of Switzerland, but also in the terms of the kind of career paths that the students can follow. That's why we have 7 faculties, and many of them are represented inside of the Blockchain Center of the University of Zurich. The Blockchain Center is a competence center inside of a university, and we have 3 main pillars that dictate the research that we perform. One of them is around the technology on blockchains, the other is about business, economics and finance of blockchain-based systems, and the third pillar is about law, regulation and governance of these systems. But we do not consider these 3 pillars as separated. We consider that only a whole understanding of blockchain-based systems can be achieved by looking at them from an interdisciplinary point of view. And this is what we do at the Blockchain Center. We have a lot of research in these realms, but we also have very complete educational programs for our students, but also for people that are already working in industry. We try to address this kind of systems, we try to understand these systems from all these different points of view, but there is something that we always resort on very much, which is data analytics. For us, blockchains are a precious mine of data to understand the functioning of these socioeconomic systems.
That sounds super interesting. And why is it so important to compare these social economic systems from an academic perspective?
Because in blockchains, you have something that is unique, which is that the set of incentives that are placed, either by design, but also inadvertently when these systems are designed, completely translate in the way in which the systems function once they are deployed in the real world. And people do not react to incentives as system planners would like them to react, okay? And this is what creates and makes blockchain-based platforms so interesting from a research point of view.
From an academic point of view, what we've seen is that these socio-economic systems are really interesting because, the incentives from the design perspective doesn't always work as intended. And with Bitcoin, we had a very clear and very strict governance. With Ethereum, we got a bit more. And now with Cardano, for instance, is a very flexible protocol who has a lot of protocol parameters who allows us to design on the go very, very different incentives. So from an academic point of view, how is that going to be to kind of, go from very restricted to a very open design and a very fluid design in the research?
Yeah, the point is that the way in which Bitcoin-like blockchains, the first generation of blockchains, have been working has led to a tremendous amount of centralization. This didn't change much with Ethereum, for example. And what I like very much of this third generation is exactly this adaptivity that they plan to have to the different working conditions that they exhibit. Once again, the question is, how much do we know of the way in which the users respond to these changes of governance is something that actually we want to see in the data to exactly help the ecosystem to support them in order to achieve their goals that they may have.
And do you need to do something like on an infrastructure basis at the University of Zurich to start, looking into Cardano and start looking at how we work?
Absolutely. We are now building a blockchain data observatory at the University of Zurich that is exactly for that purpose. We are interested in understanding the functioning of different blockchain-based systems. Cardano is very interesting, as many other third-generation blockchains, but also older blockchains. And we aim at providing a world-class infrastructure supporting the consensus mechanisms of all these systems, but also serving us in the process of collecting the data and standardizing it in a way that we can serve our own research, the research of others, but also the ecosystem, because the ecosystem will also be nurtured by the data that we will be producing and analyzing.
So essentially what you're saying is that whoever is going to line the value capture layer, they're going to start looking or consuming the blockchain data and kind of evaluate who is doing what and where is there a gap for a business model to evolve, but also where is there some scrutiny or some public noise who needs to be made to improve the systems. Is that correctly understood?
Exactly. So what we want to do is to understand the large scale properties of these economies. We want to understand processes like wealth accumulation, inequality, a balance of power between different actors, because we also have decision-making processes taking place in blockchains. Use cases, and which are the use cases that are actually nurturing the ecosystems from activity. These are the kind of things that we want to learn. We want to understand as well changes in governance or changes in incentives towards specific groups, how they actually translate into changes in the economic functioning of these systems. And there are three ways that are specifically important and three areas in which data collection is specifically important for us. On the one hand, how rewards are distributed between the people that, for example, in a delegated proof-of-stake blockchain like Cardano is taking place. Are specific users benefiting more from this kind of distribution or not? Is it increasing the inequality in the system and eventually the balance of power or not? This is very important for Cardano because at the end of the day, the consensus in blockchain-based systems necessitates it to be distributed. You cannot have a blockchain-based systems in which you always have, for example, block productions in the hands of few. Like, for example, it's happening in the first and second generation blockchains. As I was saying, reward distributions is one aspect that is very important in terms of data collection for us. Second is the native token. The native token, in the case ADA, in the case of Cardano, Bitcoin, Ether, and so on, are the natural incentive for people to enter the system. And economic processes within these native cryptocurrencies is peculiarly important for the ecosystem. And eventually you have a lot of tokens that are created, fungible and non-fungible, and specific use cases. That is a second layer of activity that's taking place in the blockchain. So all these three areas are going to be continuously collecting and also providing continuously feedback, not only to the ecosystem, but also to people that may be interested on the functioning of this system. And also will nurture our research as well.
In terms of a transparency aspect, or should I say, how much data you can get out of the blockchains, is there a certain accounting model who's easier to work with, or is there certain infrastructure where you say, actually, that's more transparent than other things, at least to get the numbers you need to do your academic research?
Absolutely. So UTXO and variants ways of storing the data inside of blockchain are particularly interesting for us and allowed us to advance much more the data the understanding of the functioning of these systems than account-based systems. And I can mention two different areas in the way in which this kind of data storage has helped us. On the one hand, because it allows us to have a much better understanding of the different pseudonyms that people use inside of the systems. Because people leak information about the different addresses that belong to them because of the way in which they reuse the addresses in different transactions. On the other side, there are other properties like is the economic reusage of tokens that is fundamental to understand how much time people keep their assets in their own wallets before spending them. And this is very important to understand user behavior inside of the systems. And recently we have created a methodology to analyze the individual contribution to large-scale measures in the functioning of the Bitcoin and parents economies that allows us to understand, as I said, the individual contribution to macroscopic properties like, for example, the velocity of money. And this is much simpler to do if you have full information about reusage of tokens, like in the case of UTXO-based platforms.
So the Cardano ecosystem or the Cardano Foundation, we've basically gone on a 3-year journey with you, who's just kicking off now. So the next 3 years, we are expecting to see, some unbiased truth about what's happening, not just in the Cardano ecosystem, but also much wider into the blockchain observatory and the blockchain center here, where you're comparing also other protocols. But are you lacking something to get started on the research?
Not really. I think that we have a vibrant team of a lot of PhDs and postdocs that are from completely different areas of expertise that are supporting the creation of this infrastructure. We have a lot of support from the university that is very keen of establishing this infrastructure as well in the University of Zurich. You said something that was very important that for us, that is unbiased understanding of the ecosystem. Because to my understanding, building this large-scale observatory is something that helps us while we are doing research, but us understanding other third-generation blockchains is something that supports Cardano, and us having a better understanding of Cardano as well has positive effects on other platforms as well. I think that this is critical because each one of the platforms has conceived in completely novel ways incentives to keep their systems consistent and evolve over time. Which is the impact of specific design choices on the outcome is not always so clear. It is something that we cannot know because all the development of these systems is based on basic mathematical modeling. Humans are different. We learn, we adapt, we change when the systems are in operation. And this is exactly the kind of things in which we want to realize an understanding of the relationship between incentives that are placed at the beginning with the outcomes that people obtain and the reaction of people to these incentives in order to better develop the ecosystem in the long run.
And that's exactly why we chose to partner with your team, because for us, when we're looking at the different protocol parameters and the Cardano Foundation role in the 10s and 20 and 30 years to come, what's important is to learn not just from the Cardano blockchain, but from other blockchains and other ecosystems, and really allow our users to basically vote and change protocol parameters over time to optimize that towards being a principal architecture of the future. So I think that's really important.
I am really happy about this forward-looking approach because it is. I think that you mentioned something very important, Fred, at the beginning, which was we had these first and second generation blockchains that were rigidly conceived, okay? And we are here at the paramount of a complex socioeconomic system when we are facing blockchains, which is we are designing a technical infrastructure for humans to exchange value, create business ideas, create communities around it. You cannot predict on day zero how people will react to your design choice. And then you will have to adapt. This technocratic approach that the original generations of blockchains had exactly led them very far away from the objectives that the community had when these systems were deployed. Everything, even Dogecoin, for example. You had a meme currency that the community was very clear of what was the value that it's going to have. And eventually it changed dramatically. It turned itself into something completely different, a speculative asset, the Paramount last year, because the people adapted. And then you cannot think of governing the system in the same way. You cannot think of creating incentives in the same way. And that's why thinking of governance that allows for the evolution and self-reflects on the feedback that it gets from prior experiences is fundamental in the long run.
Yeah, it's when you put math and rational thinking on top of a, not just one human organism, but, 7-8 billion people who's interacting in, a social economic way, but also in a, with social systems and regulation and interaction. I think that's exactly at that transition where things make or break or things evolve. And I think it's really this evolution that we need to be looking at and to ensure that we can get people from around the world to adopt this kind of technologies, to change the way they interact with governments, with people, with technology.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that for that is fundamental another aspect that is important for us as a blockchain center in our role of university as well, which is to educate people. I think that a lot of problems that happened also with the speculative aspect of different cryptocurrencies and blockchain-based assets is the fact that people did not understand which was the value, that still do not understand which is the value that is behind these systems. Okay? And that's why activity is so important inside of these environments. Understanding that people is using it for some purpose is something that the people should be aware of, but also understand the metrics, measure these things inside of the systems, understand which are the platforms that have large activity and contrast them with others that do not. There is also another aspect which is people has been talking a lot about blockchains, even in the media and so on, without understanding which is the actual functioning of them. And without understanding how important for them it is, for example, that lack of centralization is present in them for them to be trustworthy. And I think that this is key. It is not so clear that the people has realized that the oldest blockchains actually are continuously departing from this way of functioning. Okay, and for that you need to educate not only people that is in academia, I mean students that are in our universities, but also you need to educate or to teach people that is already in industry, and that's fundamental. And also you said something else that is important, which is we need to reach 8 billion of people. It is very important actually that all the educational programs also reach not only countries that are better off than others, but that actually that enable the program should enable as well the participation of people from all around the globe, because this is where we will see much more innovation than what we have seen so far.
Yeah, I think this inclusivity is very important. And as far as I understand, you actually run a private version of a blockchain here, and we've collaborated on the blockchain summer school now for, I think it's the third year in a row. And last year we actually had very, very diverse participants, and they ended up actually launching code on mainnet on Cardano. How was that experience?
It was fantastic. We did 2 experiments with Cardano last year. One of them was actually people were able to mint NFTs, and for that our collaboration with Wolfram Blockchain Labs is also was very interesting because they participated in this part of the program. And on the other side, I like very much that the summer, let me give a few words about the summer school. The summer school is a very interdisciplinary program, exactly reflecting the activities that we have at the university. The students once again learn about technology, business, economics and finance, law, governance. This also inside of the program of the summer school. And these pillars are fundamental to understand the ecosystems. I think that in our summer school, critical understanding of blockchain platforms is what I want that all the students leave the course with. And we have between 70 and 80 participants. This year is also sold out, which I'm also really happy with. And as part of the last week of their activities, the students need to work on a final project. But they need to work on the final project in an interdisciplinary manner. It is not that we have only 5 computer scientists working together, but we have a couple of people that know about programming, a couple of people who know about business development, the economics, they try to assign incentives, and someone else that supports them in the working of the regulatory issues that they may face if they want to implement that thing. And one thing that is important is that the students select in freedom with which platform they want to work, okay? And for example, last year we had this very interesting group that was also thinking of implementing certifications inside of the Cardano blockchain, and actually they were able to produce the proof of a concept in 5 days, which is something that made me particularly proud of, but also should make you proud yourself.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're always very excited when people go from zero knowledge around Cardano to sufficient knowledge that you can actually do something like certification or NFT or work with an Oracle service around Wolfram and so on. I know a lot of people are using the word the digital divide, and very often we speak about that in terms of developing countries. But I was thinking about, do you sometimes see there's also a digital divide in terms of in academia, where you are being forced to be in these fields way more hands-on in terms of code and bare metal servers and so on? And how do you port that over to maybe regulators and policymakers and other stakeholders of academia?
It's a difficult question because I think that actually from the works of many people that come from social sciences or from qualitative way of doing research, there is still this kind of a gap between the two approaches to blockchain still exist. I think that if we were building the observatory as well, it's exactly to build and to digest part of the data for other people to be able to understand better the functioning of the system. Everybody. I was talking about a general audience, but researchers from different fields are fundamental in our vision. At the University of Zurich, I am really happy that we have a spectrum of people with different levels of technical capabilities, and I think that we are able to communicate easily with each other. I think that our faculty is already very interdisciplinary. I am in the faculty of business, economics, and informatics. You see that you have people from completely different fields, people that do data science and people that do quant analysis. And people that just develop business models or create new managerial approaches to the future of work, for example. And I think that in the Blockchain Center, this digital divide doesn't exist so much, but it is certainly a challenge. And it is actually part of the beauty of working on this space, that you always need to work with and to communicate with people that has a completely different background and a completely different journey that drove them into this, into the interest in this field. And I was all the time doing interdisciplinary research in my career. Is something that, specifically in blockchain, is something that makes it much more appealing than other areas that are currently being developed.
That sounds really amazing and very interesting. I think sometimes the digital divide is also something we see that people don't want to see it on a marketing page. People don't want to see it on a YouTube page. People want to go to an unbiased institution to try and navigate all the noise out there. So how much are you being approached by, politicians or by, research bodies or think tanks and have to give, your unbiased view on these topics?
A lot, actually. I am really happy that we have been, this country has been very welcoming to all the activities in the area of blockchain in the past years. That's why you're also now here. And I am really happy about the involvement of the federal, cantonal government as well and how they engaged the Blockchain Center in many of their activities. We have been representing Switzerland in a large series of events that shows two things. On the one hand, that we were able to communicate the kind of activities that we have, the relevance that they have, but also the importance that this country is giving to all this ecosystem and the flourishing of the ecosystem inside. But it is also true that the activities that we are building inside of the Blockchain Center have been attracting people from completely different fields. For example, we have been looking at taxation properties of delegated proof of stake, for example, which is the issues that you face in a country like Switzerland when you are going to be taxated about this, absolutely. And I think that the relevance of universities inside of this ecosystem are a natural, is huge because they are the natural articulation point between industry, governments, because you need, as you say, the unbiased bodies in the middle. And this is something that was not so clear, for example, in 2017. I think that in the bubble in 2017, 2018, it was very much business driven, many of the activities. And I think that now we are seeing a more balance because people, also with academia, with governments, because people want to understand more, not only to find the next investment option. And I think that this is fundamental in the ecosystem to continue to thrive.
So one of the things which we're really striving for in the Cardano Foundation is to build up some knowledge bodies on the blockchain who can help the average, let's say, blockchain citizen who is interacting with the blockchain to vote and to participate and so forth. And I truly believe that one of those knowledge bodies must be academia. Could you imagine a situation where you're either helping people to vote in terms of how you're publishing research, potentially even are voting on behalf of people, so you become nearly like a politician, or a situation where you at least are guiding people to vote through some of the research you're doing?
Yes, I think that the three environments that you are describing suit more or less our vision, and I think that which is the one that is best suited for each platform is something that must be decided by the platform. We may have our own choice related to this, but certainly an objective of the data collection that we want to perform and the data sharing that also we want to achieve is exactly to allow people to take governance decisions. It may be also the foundation itself, for example, but it may be also the blockchain citizens, as you described. Another possibility in terms of governance that I envision is academia to be involved in the governance process, but because of we do not represent any specific interest, and if we understand the mandates that, for example, a foundation like Cardano's may have in the long run, we may try to achieve just those mandates and not necessarily be guided by some more subjective reasoning.
I think politicians have different purposes in life, right? One is in Switzerland, where we have very few politicians and they're really close democracy. And then if you go to countries like maybe the US, it's very far democracy, right? So the politician has a lot more power. And in some ways, I think maybe academia could evolve to help in certain situations to decomplex very complex topics like a blockchain or like performance parameters or protocol parameters or incentives. And that would allow the average person who wants to be heard some help, that they don't need to read the code or they don't need to understand everything.
Absolutely. I think that's why we want to have a lot of dashboards and so on, and that's why the interaction with you people is important during the project, and not only, I think. Our objective is to develop by ourselves the kind of metrics that are important for the people, because you will not necessarily realize them by yourself. But at the end of the day, we also want that the different participants are able to go to the web page of the University of Zurich or whatever, to our own data repository, and understand which are the effects that the specific parameters may have on the future development of Cardano and any other platform as well.
I think a part of this is really thinking not just about where academia is going in the future, but also the socio-economic system around how do you fund academia and what is the role of academia. And I think now where knowledge nearly becomes free, meaning that you can, nearly find anything you want out there. If you want to build a spaceship or you want to, do gene cutting, you can find it on the internet. I think that there's a competition going on, and I think maybe one way where academia could go is that they become these kind of professional knowledge politicians on the blockchains who is evolving, not just the Cardano blockchain. And I think that's, also ensuring a growth, maybe even in academia, and also in the opportunities for giving continuous jobs and continuously difficult tasks to solve for researchers.
Yeah, in a way, it is as a vision that we have in the Blockchain Center as well is exactly that, is supporting the development of the ecosystem. And what I'm saying is it translates into what you are saying as well. And as well, I think that there is something that is important, and I will repeat something that I said before, which is the fact that we know about some platforms, or that we are unbiased with respect to the platforms that we develop and that we teach, is something that actually is much better as well for Cardano Foundation, for example, as for any other foundation. So I say this because I'm talking to you. But it's because we have gathered the expertise and experience that you could not achieve by yourself, because you have your own objectives as Cardano Foundation. And I think that academia can be exactly that bridge that in a way serves as as a communicating string between the different platforms and well, in which the knowledge is produced and also shared in order to achieve the objectives that each one of the platforms may have in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting journey to work with you for the next 3 years, and I hope that all your listeners is going to get a lot more of Claudio Tessone and the Blockchain Observatory and the Blockchain Center. At least as he saw, there's going to be dashboards, there's going to be some reporting, there's going to be quite a lot of learning. And what we can do from the Cardano Foundation side is obviously to keep supporting academia and university, but also ensuring that we really look on this long time horizon.
Absolutely.
That we look towards how do we actually mature the blockchains? How do we actually ensure that blockchain really is open for business? And we do have this feeling that we are at an inception point now, where blockchain finally is open for business. And what I mean about that is that you can actually start moving legacy business architecture towards blockchains at scale, and where some of it works. We are still not in a place where everything would work, but we're in a place where we can move away from only blockchain native applications. Would you see the same way as me on that?
Yes, I think that so far the level of innovation that we have seen in blockchain-based systems has been, honestly speaking, not particularly large. And let me explain what I am saying is, we have seen tremendous things that have been done in blockchains, but 80% of the business models or of the development that has taken place was to re-implement in the new substrate financial services and asset classes that we already knew from before. And I think that all the range of activities that are enabled by blockchains has still not been realized so far, because we still do not know how to do it. Cryptoeconomics is fantastic, it's tokenomics, all the kind of things that you can do is, we can even not imagine the level of things that you can do with this kind of economic instruments. But we are not there yet, because there is still not the knowledge to do that. And I think this is fundamental. And for that, in previous layer in which we implement and complete all the financial services and other governing infrastructure, for example, are fundamental inside of the blockchains today. We need that layer. Is what happens when you develop a city. You know that when you develop a city grows, always obtains the same level of infrastructure that was existing before. So even if you're going to have an innovation park in the corner of the city, it needs electricity, water, and so on and so forth, transport. You always need a basic infrastructure. And I think that still at the level of blockchains, we are still traversing that area without realizing yet what we can do on top of it. And I think this is where we will see a lot of development in the next years.
Yeah, I think this public available infrastructure for people to really capture value up there, and that includes developer tools, includes the plumbing of the city, it includes safety, includes clarity around regulation, but also this trust layer. And I think the trust layer where we see this move, or maybe not maybe not a move, but we see an innovation going towards or away from proof of work towards proof of stake. And the maturity of proof of stake is also going to change the trust layer around these blockchains. And I think that's specifically where the Cardano Foundation is going to make a tremendous effort, is really around this public available infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So, because I mean, everywhere where there is trust, good things happen. Trade happens and so on. So how do you think that the university can be a part of that infrastructure?
The universities are, in each country, I think that they have perhaps the best, or let's say the most reliable IT services that you have around in all these systems. And I think that contributing to the consensus layer is something that the universities that are interested in blockchain should be doing much more often, because of different reasons. On the one hand, because it allows to perform fantastic research with the data that you can collect, because you are continuously supporting the consensus. But on the other side, more or less completes this vision that we were talking about before. It also enables contributing to the governance of the system. And I think that this is an additional value added of participating of the consensus protocols and supporting this technology layer as well there.
So thank you, Claudio. It's been amazing to be here at the University of Zurich. I'm really looking forward to working closely with your team. And I'm also looking forward to sitting potentially here in this chair again, talking about the results of your research and what we actually can learn from it when we compare the different blockchains, when we compare the different incentive models and so forth. So,
Frederik, thank you very much for hosting me, even if we hosted you physically. But thank you for this very nice session. It was fantastic talking to you. And I also look forward to sharing our results and continuing our collaboration. Thank you.
So from Crypto Nation, the beautiful Switzerland, University of Zurich, we are toning out and looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully sooner than later.